So, as shared, at the age of 11, I started to develop these feelings. I was going through puberty, hormones are rushing, and I was feeling a strong attraction to other boys in my class. Very normal for, I guess, many to share that they had it for the opposite sex. For me, it was the same. And it wasn't until I was 17 that I had actually decided to come out to my family. And it's a very odd story, but basically, I had made a few gay friends who were older than me in college at the young age of 16. And I've always kind of grown up too fast. I've always been a little ahead of myself. But I made these friends, and they had always asked me about my situation, how my family was. We'd often talk about each other's experiences. And I always said that I think that my parents would be cool with it. And one of my friends, I remember, had said that if you think so, why don't you just come out to them? What are you waiting for? And that stuck with me. And a month later, I had gone to Puerto Vallarta with my family, and actually 4 other families. It was a trip with all of us, and I had gotten insanely drunk. And especially in Mexico, there's very liberal rules in regards to the drinking laws. It's kind of just if you look old enough, they give it to you. And I remember I shamed my entire family that day by getting obliterated. And to a degree, I lost my pride. I got sick. They had to bathe me. They had to take care of me. And as I was waking up and kind of realizing what had happened, my mother just out of nowhere kind of bombarded me with lots of questions. Why would I do this? And she now says that deep down inside she knew, and it provoked her to ask me if I was gay. And at that moment, I had decided that I wasn't going to lie anymore, and I had told her that I was. So, to a degree, I actually never came out. She kind of did it for me, but yeah, that was how it happened. So, immediately after coming out to my mother, it was a very vulnerable time, but it was very special at the same time. And my father was kind of ignoring me because of my recent events of drinking so much and being irresponsible. And my mother was I think she was a little overwhelmed, didn't know what to do, but she knew that we needed to do this as a family. So she had urged me to tell my father. I kept saying no. So she had called him in the room. I think he was outside on a call in the hallway. And she had called him in the room, and she told him that I had something to tell him. And it was then when I had told him. And I remember his response was very nonchalant and very cool. It was kind of like, okay, like, all right, like, it's fine. You don't have to get married. Like, it's no big deal. And although I do want to get married, at that time, that was just the thought in his head. And yeah, I later found out that they had went back to their room and cried and released all their emotions. But I was very spoiled in the sense that they sheltered me from having me deal with their pain. They went through their emotions, and they then joined PFLAG, Parents for Lesbians and Gays. So I was a little overwhelmed with their support, but I think it's part of the reason why I would call myself successful today. In regards to pressure, it was very tricky. Immediately after, it was kind of requested of me to not tell anyone, especially with my grandparents being of old age. They didn't know how to handle this. They expressed their love and they supported me, but they were simultaneously asking me to suppress it in some ways until we decided what to do. I took their love, I respected them, but I did not suppress it. I told everyone. It was kind of liberating, and through that, I'm glad I did do that, because through that, my parents were then forced to accept it even more, tell their peers, and in terms of pressure, it was very interesting because on one end, I was being asked to suppress myself, so essentially don't date anyone, you don't worry about marriage anytime soon, we still have to tell people. And then on another end, it was like, well, we still want you to live this life, have a family, get married. So I was getting mixed messages in that regard. But in terms of pressure, many of my peers who came out struggled, actually, which brought me great pain. I think there was a lot of resentment from them to me. I would say my parents felt more pressure than I did, and primarily because they had heard through the grapevine that so-and-so's kid is gay, and many of them who weren't accepting of such notions found it in them to be helpful in their psychosis and their regard. They thought they were helping us by proposing solutions. There were all sorts of different forms of conversion therapy that you can offer in the US and India. Many of them found that forcing me to get married at a younger age would be the solution, and I would somehow magically not be gay anymore. So we had all sorts of proposals that my parents received, but luckily I was sheltered. But I heard about it from afar, and it was very entertaining. Yeah. It's very common for our South Asian community to try to interfere or in some regards help those who are struggling, but in many ways it's even more detrimental to try to fix or change something that's just natural. I would argue that because we're a collectivistic culture, it's our nature to be around and support those around us, but sometimes I think in our community it could be a little invasive, and if we could inspire those to receive more education and receive more awareness and increase their chances of being more open-minded to new understandings, I think that would be a step forward in saving a lot of lives, for sure. One humbling part of being an advocate for LGBTQ rights is that I often have many peers in my circle who decide that they want to marry a girl to please their family, and part of them wants to do that too because they would like to mirror the type of family environment they came from. And two peers I know who did that ended up in a divorce, and one had a child, so in some regards it did not work out very well. And I would say, had I been asked for my opinion on this 5 years ago, I was very passionately against it. I actually wrote letters to my friends, like calling them all sorts of names, trying hardly to convince them out of this. And now my opinion hasn't changed much, but my action has, and my advocacy has. Getting angry and firing at someone isn't the way to get things changed and get things moving, but instead I try to live by inspiration. And if we can make this world a less scary place where people didn't feel such pressure, this wouldn't happen as much. So in regards to what I see, I was hoping that it would be a decrease, because in our parents' generations, this was common, this was the only way to live. But unfortunately, it's still part of our reality, and I just hope that as times pass, as marriage equality and all sorts of LGBTQ issues are on the news all over the place during the day, I hope that such statistics will decrease. It was very tricky, my depression and the amount I suffered from this. I would say it was hand-in-hand depression and alcoholism. After coming out to my parents after a heavy night of drinking, the binge drinking didn't really stop there. I was kind of a reckless kid in some ways, and I remember a week after I turned 18, I had gotten arrested for getting a DUI. And I remember my mother, after, picking me up, and no one wants their mother picking them up from, a jail cell. But I remember, after a couple of days, she'd asked me, like, we supported you, we loved you, like, why are you doing this? And one tough reality was that I had not accepted it for myself. I had grown up in an environment that was so hateful that I had hated myself. And even though I had the education to know that was wrong of me to think that, because I believed there was nothing wrong with being gay, I still had years of feeling like there was to dictate my emotions. So that was very difficult. And my life has been very unique in that I've always felt that in this move, both parallel with the movement that we're in and with my own life, I've always taken 5 steps forward and 10 backwards. So it just gives me an excuse to keep moving, keep on trying to make it so we're only going forward. But I remember after working for the Marylanders for Marriage Equality campaign, which was marriage equality in the state of Maryland, the first state to win at the ballot vote, I had joined the Human Rights Campaign. And halfway through my internship, I was on this, I was having such a great experience on Supreme Court steps. And one day I woke up in the hospital. And that was very tough because I had drank too much and I had gotten gay bashed. I don't remember much. I can't really identify who it was, but little glimpses that I have in flashbacks. There were a lot of name calling, faggot, you name it. And waking up in the hospital with, 2 chipped teeth and scratches and blood everywhere was probably the most humbling experience of my life. And it was tough because I had to decide in that moment, either I could hate myself and leave all my work and just be as not gay as I could be, or I could fight even harder. And I chose to fight, but for about a year after that incident, I was severely depressed, where it affected my relationship with my family, it affected my friendships, and that was definitely a growing pain of my 23rd year of life. So. With all the struggles that I've endured, I would say that I'm now in a good place. Part of me also believes that you kind of have to struggle to really, no successful person in the world says it was easy. We all have to go through something. And unfortunately mine was sometimes even physical, but I would say that I'm in a really good place. I have a great job. I work for a nonprofit that gives back to those who are poor in India. And not only is that very rewarding, I have built a stronger relationship with my family through this process. Before I was kind of that quiet kid who they didn't really get to know, and now we've all kind of evolved. My brothers have grown up knowing that their brother's gay, and they're 9-10 years younger than me, and it's really refreshing to see a group of young high school boys who don't have a homophobic bone in their body. That's something I've never seen before, and to see them grow up with that and to grow up knowing that there's nothing wrong with that, it just teaches us that hatred is taught. And in regards to how I'm doing, I'm single, so that's fun, but I would say I'm happy for the most part. Yeah.